Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Black Void by Black Void Games, Part 1. Okay, first a bit of history. Released in 2019, Black Void is a 420-page full-colour hardback that takes place in a dark fantasy setting where the players take the role of descendants of the survivors of Earth, and it is about the fall and resurgence of humanity. In this video I'll be covering the first chapter, which covers an introduction to the setting and creating a character. To the cover. Here we have a really nice piece that definitely creates the mood of the setting. Onto the inside. We're greeted on the inside plate by a nicely detailed map of somewhere, and then we move on to the inscription, "Survival is only the beginning," and we then go on to the ominously titled "The Fall of Earth." Here it tells a short tale of the days when Babylon was the greatest city on Earth and the arrival of a black mist from the heavens which engulfed everything in its wake. Smoky tendrils emerged from the fog, pulling in everything in their vicinity, the people of Earth helpless to do anything. Mankind cried out to the gods, but their pleas were ignored as humans were sucked into the black void. The truth of existence was revealed, and the vastness of the great beyond left some enlightened and drove some to madness. Countless lives were lost as mankind was thrown into the maelstrom. It talks of places where the veil between the void and the cosmos is thin, and this is where Lin, the Eternal, exists, and where the survivors of mankind washed up like driftwood, with many being scattered amongst the stars and Earth remaining as a distant memory, with mankind facing a new struggle to survive. So with that in mind, we move to the introduction. Here we get a take on the usual question as to what role-playing is. The referee in Black Void is known as the Arbiter, and the game runs on the maxim, simplicity grants diversity. A simple explanation of this is that all of Black Void is based on a few basic principles that make the rules easy to understand. The system is based entirely on a target number on D12, with high being good and low being a lesser effect. It gives us a breakdown of the content of the core book, where we find out there are 10 chapters broken down into 5 for players and 5 for arbiters. We then move on to the setting and ambience. It makes the point that in ancient times mankind was shoved into a subsistence at the bottom of the hierarchy in the dystopian cosmopolis of Lin, a place populated by strange and dangerous things from other dimensions, bizarre alien creatures and daemons from beyond the veil. It is here that humankind struggles for survival among the beggars, slaves and casteless, looking to the opulent alien races above them. In this vast cosmos there are worlds that seem familiar to humans, whereas others are strange and alien. Some have grand civilizations, others have no life. The void itself is an ethereal, constantly fluctuating ocean, a completely alien and bizarre place, inhabited by unimaginable life and mindless, ghostly abominations. The void is a place of chaos. The cosmos is a place of order. The veil divides the void and the cosmos from each other, but it is sometimes unstable, perforated and ruptured, allowing these opposites to spill into each other. The central area of interest for the game is Lin the Eternal, a border domain at the heart of a huge convergence of void currents. It is a hub and waypoint for major trade routes and a melting pot for species from across the cosmos. It remains independent from external influence and is considered a neutral ground and a place of cultural tensions, social intricacies and political rivalries, all under the watchful eyes of the Horlokin, the extended arm of the unseen rulers of Lin. We then shift focus to the concept and game themes. The game revolves around the fall and subsequent resurgence of mankind, as it desperately claws itself from the bottom of the abyss, and the main focus remains the part the players take in the fate of humanity. It asks the questions that are designed to define a place for mankind, with the main one seeming to be, where do we go from here? They will be exposed to quandaries of a philosophical, psychological and ethical nature and will need to discover their place. They face adversity at every turn, encountering sentient species with different mentalities that will make them question their own. There will be political intrigue and cultural tension to deal with, and they risk being embroiled in fights they have no stake in. When the realm beyond the veil is explored, nothing returns how it entered, and the players should be exposed to otherworldly, strange and bizarre ideals and philosophies while being left to decide what humanity actually is as well as where it should be. Following this, we have a scripted example of play that takes up 2 full pages, and then we move on to Chapter 1, Character Creation. In Black Void, it stresses the importance of creating a character that the Arbiter can build a story around, and this is based on 3 principles. Firstly, what defines your character, i.e., what qualities do they possess? For example, a brutish bully with few social skills, or a genius diplomat who can manipulate others, or even someone with no general weaknesses. Secondly, what are their origin, what is their upbringing, and what is responsible for making them what they are today? Lastly, what is the character's drives, What do they aspire to in life, and what are they willing to do to achieve this? Characters are created with an allocation of points that are divided up as a player sees fit amongst traits, talent, background, attributes, powers and skills. More on those in a bit. It then goes into a step-by-step guide on creating your character. Step 1 defines that your character is human and a descendant of Earth. You need to consider their age and gender. You can choose whether your character has been affected by exposure to the stimuli of the likes of the Void or interbreeding, and decide if you want to be either a human, half-blood or Void marked. These determine various factors for the character. In step 2, you define your character's homeworld, whether that be a Lin native, a world deep within the Void, or even an escapee from a savage world. Step 3 is resolving your character's trait scores. These are inherent strengths and weaknesses, as well as their physical, mental and social characteristics. There are 8 traits: agility, awareness, stamina, strength, intellect, persuasion, presence and willpower. Step 4 covers their talents and flaws. These are positives and negatives associated with their trait scores, and they are used to make your character more interesting. Step 5 is your background. This defines your social standing, allies, resources and ancestry. These can help or hinder you in achieving your goals, as well as acting as inspiration for the Arbiter. Step 6 is attributes. These are physical qualities such as wings or horns, and are for characters who are not human. Voidmark characters can obtain esoteric characteristics and powers beyond those of humans. Step 7 is powers. These are supernatural abilities that are divided into 3 areas: mystic power, blood rituals and void powers. Mystic powers allow characters to channel their mental energy or inner void in order to change reality. Blood rituals deal with sacrificial divination, bloodletting and the like that grant boons and fortunes, and void powers are innate in human abilities and manifestations gained by those who have been touched by the void. More on those later. These are the learned abilities of a character and measure competence. Skills are assigned to specific traits but can use different ones dependent on the situation. Step 9 is completion of the character. Here you calculate your health, sanity, movement and defense values and make a note of their enlightenment and Wastar values. Most of these values are self-explanatory apart from the last 2. It explains that 2 of the main concepts of Black Void are understanding and influence, and these are represented in game terms by enlightenment, which gains them extraordinary powers and abilities, and Wastar, which denominates sway and influence. These are both story-driven and achieved only by exploration and interaction and ranked in tiers. Step 10 is coming to life. This is the stage where you examine the character for possibilities for further development and give the scores a meaning, and finally we have step 11 where you determine your wealth and possessions. The author has created a sample character called Ziana, and this shifts us onto character points. The Arbiter will decide at the beginning of the game how many character points the player starts with, and they should be allotted amongst traits, talent, backgrounds, attributes, powers and skills, as shown in this table here. Once allotted, the character sheet should be filled out with the occasional caveat. It gives a list of character creation rules here. Things like talents cost 3 character points each, and only characters who have the Voidmark background can choose mystic powers. There are 16 rules in total. Next we go into Descendants of the Earth. Here it talks about the kind of characters players can play. It discusses humanity and how a few generations have passed since the devastation of Earth and the scattering of mankind, noting that mankind was never a united species and 3 enclaves exist within the Eternal City. It describes humans as living at the bottom of the social hierarchy of a city that regards them as inferior. The game revolves around the fall and resurgence of mankind. It suggests that initially all characters should be human, or at least partially so, and that different hereditary options should be introduced gradually. Firstly we have purebloods, direct descendants of Earth with their heritage apparent. Human characters have no innate abilities, but can learn blood rituals and are susceptible to the void, and children born in Lin and the like are starting to demonstrate strange capabilities. Next we have half-bloods, those whose descendants are from Earth and elsewhere. These are beginning to emerge more readily in the human population, and though they retain a strong likeness to humans, they are marked physically somewhere. Though not always shunned, they are eyed suspiciously. Void-marked are not entirely human, and have a strange heritage that often gives them outlandish features and personality traits. As they were birthed beyond the veil, they are influenced by the chaotic elements of the void, and are often regarded with fascination by humans. As children of 2 worlds, they often lack a sense of belonging, and are not understood by either side of their heritage. It then goes on to discuss the remnants of mankind, where it talks about the adaptability of humans and their survivability in the Eternal City. Most can make ends meet, and some species were even surprised and confused by how quickly humans adapted and made themselves a home. Mankind falls into 4 groups. those aligned to one of the established human enclaves, outsiders from outside Lynn, individuals native to the Eternal City, and established groups on lost or faraway worlds with no contact to other humans. Player characters will usually be patronised by a leader of a faction, though it was always a struggle against rival factions and external threats. It goes on to explain that there are 3 human communities in Lynn, each with a distinctiveness. There are roughly banded together groups of thugs, thieves and scroungers known as the Beggar's Court, under the patronage of the Beggar King and residing in the Flea Palace. There is the Firadani Enclave, the most reputable and structured commune in the city, governed by Firada and an upcoming power in Lynn. The newest enclave is the Assembly, who have elected representatives and seeks to build diplomatic ties with other species there. Enclave members are either born or sworn into service, following their rules and receiving support and backing to further the community's goals. Outsiders are usually from established backwater worlds and have chosen to remain independent. They're usually resourceful and vigilant, though largely ignorant of the power plays within Lynn. Recluses are typically natives born in the Eternal City who make the conscious decision to live apart from the other communities or who have been forced away for some reason. These people often prefer the company of otherworldly species, which usually fuels a desire to explore. There's also the Lost Children. These are the humans that ended up on uncharted worlds and managed to survive, with some even flourishing and becoming enlightened, becoming able to travel the void in search for the rest of mankind. Next we move on to the section entitled Homeworld. It's here where players can define exactly where their character came from. It gives 4 options for making this definition. They can just choose freely, determine it randomly with a d12 on this table here, which also details the type of character and the benefits that can be gained. The Arbiter can choose a type that they can roll, or the Arbiter will just choose. Homeworlds have an influence on the character as they can grant specific capabilities as well as guidelines for mannerisms, appearance and behaviour. There are essentially 3 types of Homeworld: non-enlightened, enlightened and void worlds. Non-enlightened are broken down into 3 types: savage, i.e. unsophisticated and survival oriented; inhabited, those worlds with simple societies; and civilized, which have world-spanning empires that are dominated by sentient species. Enlightened has colony world, i.e. those that have established colonies on other worlds to expand territory or plunder natural resources; and the core world. These are the hubs of enlightened civilizations that interact with other worlds and that beyond the veil. Characters from these worlds tend to be quite cosmopolitan. Void worlds have Lynn native, which is pretty self-explanatory; border world, i.e. they resemble cosmic worlds but are under the influence of the void, giving characters an unearthly aspect; and deep worlds, those that are chaotic by nature. Characters from here are mystical and remarkable. It then goes into detail over the following few pages about each of the worlds mentioned above, including the benefits the characters will get in game terms. Next we move on to traits. These are innate capabilities, essentially your character's statistics. As previously explained, these are generated using the game point build system, and it goes on to explain what each trait does, with all of them being fairly self-explanatory. It lists each trait alongside the dice modifier that it generates, the meaning in real terms, with a 0 bonus being defined as average, and comparative examples are given alongside each, for example, a strength trait of 0 being equivalent to the strength of a rat. Then there is talents. These are extraordinary capabilities that a character can have that are linked to trait scores, as well as flaws which are similarly linked to traits but detrimental in nature. They are designed to emphasise a character's strength while giving a character more individuality. Any trait with a score of at least 3 allows a talent, with additional ones being added with each additional 3 points. I list them here. They are available for each trait and include things such as ambidexterity, direction sense, vigilant, strong legs, perfect liar, charmer and composed. Each of these grant an in-game benefit. Flaws are limitations and are not designed to ruin gameplay, but to present interesting challenges. Flaws chosen during character creation grant more character points, and the severity of a flaw is linked directly to the corresponding trait score, with a more severe flaw granting more points, as detailed in this table here. It lists all of the flaws here and then goes into detail on each one. There are things like clumsy, lack of situational awareness, bleeder, frail, gullibility, obvious body language, bad aura and compulsive liar. After this we have background. Here we determine the influence the past has upon the character. There are in-game benefits and they are designed to act as a good starting point. Allies, assets, contacts and the like can be determined at this step, though it is worth mentioning that these benefits cost character points. It lists all of the background, things such as caste, half-blood and void mark, and then goes into the point cost for the various levels of help that the background benefit can give. For example, for the allies background it has a point cost of 2, 4 and 6. 2 points will provide an ally of minor influence, 4 will provide 2 of a minor influence or 1 of moderate power, and 6 will provide 1 ally of substantial power and influence or 2 moderate. It details each of those for all of the different backgrounds, and then we move on to attributes. These are physical qualities that are found in non-human species. There are 2 types of general attributes, physical or sensory, that are found in cosmic species, while esoteric attributes can be found in beings from higher forms of existence. These tend to be extraordinary abilities and aspects. Again, the abilities are set at a cost by character points. They're listed here. We have things like adaptive pigment, horns, natural immunity, tail, tentacles, and even wings. It then goes on to esoteric attributes. Again, these are set at character point cost and are more powerful or strange than cosmic attributes, things like ageless, domination, multiple faces or heads, and shapeshifter. Next up is powers. There are 3 types, mysticism, blood rituals, and void powers, and they are all distinct from one another, though they can occasionally produce similar effects. Blood rituals deal with sacrificial divination boons and fortunes. Mystic powers are defined as producing esoteric phenomena by force of will, and void powers, though usually only accessible by daemons, can be found by those who have void warped or become enlightened. As per trait and the like, these are similarly determined by distribution of character points and can be enhanced by training and experience. It talks about blood rituals, stressing that it is the practice of sacrificing sentient living creatures and sometimes even daemons. There are 2 main techniques, bloodletting and sacrificial divination. Bloodletting is when the blood of a sacrifice is consumed or used for a baptism, thus imbuing the imbider or baptized with boons or fortunes. Sacrificial divination is the examination of entrails in order to provide answers. It gives game details on how to perform these powers, including the blood rite, which is a skill characters can gain ranks in. Next it moves to mysticism, explaining that this is the ability to create phenomena by force of will and do things ordinary people can't. They are said to be influenced by the void and are alleged to be hazardous yet strangely alluring. It gives information on becoming a mystic and breaks them down into 2 paths, those who use willpower as their primary trait, or furors, and those who use intellect, who are gnostics. Furors conjure effects as an intuitive outlet of emotional intensity, often allowing more powerful manifestations, whereas Gnostics use their powers as a controlled act of subtle channeling, usually resulting in effects that are performed with precision. There are 5 mystic spheres that powers are manifested from listed here: forces, life, matter, mind, and void. In order to manifest phenomena, the spheres must be purchased using character points. There are 3 different ways of manifesting phenomena: improvised phenomena, i.e. deciding there and then on the effect, known phenomena, as in ones that have been practiced, and signature phenomena, those that have been known for years and the performer is accomplished at doing. The point cost for being able to learn to do these different types of phenomena is listed here. We then have a section on skills. These are pretty self-explanatory, and all skills are ranked 0 to 12, with those with 0 being described as someone who is completely unfamiliar with the skill, and 12 described as there can be only one. Skills are purchased in character creation and cost 1 point per skill rank. Some skills are harder to master and have an increased cost, and the skills are associated with traits as listed here. It talks about how to use skills, crafting skills, and even skill specializations, and then goes into the skills themselves. It lists a few pages of all the things you might expect, such as athletics, lore, navigation, and stealth, giving good detail as to the use and specialization of the skills, and then it moves on to combat skills which use a similar system. Weapons are in broad groups such as axes or polearms, and there are other skills such as dodge and dual wielding. All of the details of the combat skills are listed here, and combat specialization is detailed and compiled in this table. Combat specializations act as essentially feats that allow characters to pull off maneuvers such as crippling strike, evade, and rapid shot, and they're all detailed here. The next section is called completing the character. Characters have a health score based on their size. Medium characters have their stamina times 6 plus d12, and large have stamina times 7 plus d12. They also, as you might expect, have a sanity score, which is their will times 6 plus d12. It covers character movement, with larger characters being able to move further, and it also defines their defense value. Medium characters have a base defense or DV of 7, large have 6, and this is modified by their agility modifier, defense skill, shield, and other factors. It covers the effects of enlightenment in-game and then moves on to Wastar, i.e. their social status. After this we go into a section called Coming to Life. Here it details gender, age and appearance, which includes figure and stature, and gives some tables to roll on to determine the appearance of pureblood, half-blood and void-marked characters. It goes over personality, which includes desires and motivations, dislikes, secrets and regrets, and philosophy and principles, and then moves on to mannerisms such as quirks, and even sayings the character could have. It then gives some discussion on origin, caste, occupation and patrons and matrons, as well as a table for creating a Black Void appropriate name. We have a few character archetypes, things such as the sage, the loner and the child, and then finally, the built-in character Ziana's character sheet fully filled out. Okay, that completes Chapter 1. Part 2 in this series will continue with Chapter 2, Equipment.